Yeah. So Mo's, she'd like to talk about poly under duress today. And I told her I thought that was great because I think I see it a lot with couples with a lot of things. I mean, even just coming in to talk to someone, sometimes someone will say, look, I'm only here because my partner said they were going to leave me if I didn't come to therapy, or I'm only here because my partner said they were going to leave me if I didn't do X, Y, or Z. And so I think a lot of times people get put in that position, not around everything. And so I think that's great. I mean, we can talk about it from a broad spectrum and then get really specific about how that shows up in the poly world.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. And I think that'll bring us into, you know, be talking about monopoly situations, which I find to be really difficult for folks.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a couple of stories around monopoly that I can share too. Um, but yeah, I think the thing that I saw most recently, or was the question that was asked was, my partner has been going to therapy for a really long time, and he just came back, and they've been together for like 20 years or something. And he just came back and told me that he wants an open relationship or he wants to split up. And so this person is contemplating having an open relationship with her partner, although that's not what she wants. She's very clear that she wants monogamy, but is willing to not throw away this, 15, 20 years relationship that they've had. Um, and so, it's like, you can, right? Of course you can. You can try this. You can get super educated. And, I think varying degrees of success, you know, around, I think it really comes down to like what you want, and whether or not you can be comfortable with the changes, right? How well you
Yeah.
roll with punches, maybe. I don't know. What do
Yeah,
you?
I find in those situations, you going into it knowing, like if you're coming at it, if both people are coming at it from different directions and one wants something, the other one doesn't, you already know that at no point are both people going to be 100% satisfied, right? So
Yeah.
you already go into it knowing like this is going to be a negotiation. This is going to be a discussion about, how much you're willing to bend, how much, what your hard boundaries are, and that's
Yeah.
that's really difficult. But unless somebody just truly has a change of heart, then yeah, no, they can't both be totally satisfied.
Yeah. I think that the thing that comes up for me is if you're practicing poly under duress, and I put those in quotes because this can be any sort of open relationship. It doesn't have to be poly. That's just the term. But like, or any sort of relationship structure that you're not really agreeing to, or that you're not doing out of a genuine desire. Um, like, I think the success rate of that is going to come into question, right?
Definitely. I see that. Yeah, I think once we get into it, I've experienced this quite a bit with some folks, and I'll definitely have some stories I can share too.
Yeah.
Um, Melissa, hi, welcome.
Hi,
Did you
welcome.
hear the beginning? You know what we're talking
I
about?
didn't, but Wayne filled me in.
Oh, fantastic. All
Yeah.
right. Well, Mo, what brought this? What brought this?
It was just a question that I saw on a Reddit thread, and it's actually pretty common. I have worked with several clients who open up under various reasons. So I have one couple who um, the male partner came into the relationship basically like, this is who I am, this is what I do, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So she kind of was forced to open up, and they started in the lifestyle. And then I've had other couples. I had another couple who actually I only saw the male client, and his wife basically took a boyfriend, and the male client went through therapy with me for maybe a year and a half, and did all the work. Like, he was reading all the books, he was on dating apps, he was struggling with it, but he was like, he's like, in theory, I like this. So I want to like learn more about it and get really comfortable. And then like he did start getting really comfortable with it and was dating and meeting women. And I think at that point, the wife broke up with her partner and wanted to close. So, he'd done all this work and he was like, then, forced to face this predicament. Like, shoot, now I've done all this work and I'm dating women. Like, do I close it up? I think that like, so in his instance, like he did the work. It took a couple of years for him to come around, but he was also young. He was like a man in his 30s or something versus a couple that's older or has been in a longer term relationship. And I think what really comes up for me is the reluctance or the reluctancy around the agreement um, can have like a power imbalance or like elements of coercion. I think that is the part that can be a little like scary, but we're all also consenting adults, right? And maybe a partner can go into it and be like, I'm not great about this. Or I'm not like thrilled about this, but let's try it. Like, they can give consent. But again, we talk about that also like, okay, let's try it, but trying it and then closing it, that's a whole
Yeah.
nother thing out there. So
Well, something that I've seen happen several times is, let's say that, it is introduced and one person does want to do it and the other one doesn't. And if they just say, okay, well, since you want to do it, you do it, and I don't want to do it, I won't. So that makes them monopoly, right? One of them saying monogamous, one of them saying poly, or one of them starts dating. I mean, if we want to talk about the power differential there, like it leans towards the person who is actually starting to date and the one who is being poly. Like they kind of have, they're moving forward, so the other person is forced into it anyway, even if they're saying monogamous. And so I feel like talking about monopoly, like what does that look like if they just say, okay, you can do that because you do want other connections and that is how you're made up and that is what you want. It's not what I want, but the other person's still having to deal with it.
yes. Um, Yeah, I think that's, I actually am working with a couple right now that are monopoly for the most part, right? Um, the mono person is totally on board, for the most part, I would say. But, more recently, I think things are getting more serious with the person that's actively poly. Um, and so it's brought up some questions and concerns, but I think there's a difference between a person practicing mono but identifying as non-monogamous, right? Like you can just have no partners right now, but your partner has partners, or your partners have, or you're like one partner has multiple partners and you don't have other partners, but you still identify as non-monogamous. Like I think we should differentiate between that, because I think a lot of people will look at the structure of a relationship, and if one person is actively dating and the other person isn't, they might be inclined to say, well, are you guys monopoly? And it doesn't really matter what's happening in the current situation. I think it really matters how the people identify the relationships that they're in.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if someone says they're bi, but they're dating someone of the same sex. It's like, well, no, you're homosexual. It's like, no, just because this is what my relationship looks like right now, that doesn't mean that's how I see the whole overall picture. But I think something else to talk about if we're going to talk about this topic is sort of don't ask, don't tell, and how murky that can get. Like that came up in my supervision this week. When if you are practicing and you say it's a don't ask, don't tell, there still needs to be guidelines around that, because things can creep up on you pretty quickly. And it's like, well, you didn't want to hear about it, so I didn't tell you. And now what you're learning is upsetting for you because the person's gotten serious with the other one or whatever. So I feel like all those kind of come into play. If you're going to help some people through this, I think it's our job to be able to point out the pitfalls that we've seen and the things that they may want to front load and try to get ahead of.
Yeah. I mean, I think the end of the day, front loading is key. Like, don't ask, don't tell doesn't work, because it mimics monogamy, right?
Yeah, it causes some. There still has to be agreements around that because it's
Well,
a big problem.
yeah, I want to sort of bring into question agreements because I think agreements are a kind of BS, right? Like a marriage is an agreement, but we all know that marriage can be bullshit, right? Like people are cheating left and right. Like agreements can help, but I think that putting too many agreements in place can actually create more rules, right? And most people get into this style of relationship and relating because they want to break out of those rules. So having agreements, I think, while I think they're sometimes necessary, like especially if you're new to opening up and um, navigating, trying to figure out how to navigate these things. But I think the basic understanding, I think that makes non monogamy work is a commitment to communicating and relating, right?
I like this, Mo. Keep going.
Yeah, I think agreements are more rules. And at the end of the day, when you are having trouble in your relationship or you're having trouble understanding your feelings, what is going to help you? No fucking agreement, excuse my language, is going to protect you or help you in that moment, right? It might make you feel better temporarily, like, oh, we've got this agreement in place. But I think that they're just panacea for, you know, trying to make us feel better. When in reality, the thing that works the best is connecting, right?
Okay. So,
Con- Connecting with your partner, and don't ask, don't tell eliminates that connection. Is
yeah.
the point? Yeah.
I,
Okay. So
I feel like,
one of
oh,
my
sorry. Go ahead,
I
Kelly.
just want to ask one question because I really like everything Mo's saying, and I think it's going to help me with several people I'm working with right now. One of my little Kellyisms that I often say is don't ever promise how you're going to, you can't ever promise how you're going to feel. You can only promise how you're going to behave. Right. And so
Yeah.
I guess I do help my clients make agreements, and I see what you're saying, how going too far with that could just cause more problems. But it's a jumping off place. It's somewhere to at least begin. And so, but I think maybe leaning more into you can't make promises around how you're going to feel, only, how we're going to behave. And I guess what you're saying is that the way we're going to behave is like the radical honesty and vulnerability and talking about it and communicating and understanding why it is your partner does or doesn't want it. Okay. I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah. No agreement is going to like like agreements around we meet once a week for our radar check-in. That's an agreement, right? We meet once a week to go see our couples therapist. We spend every Sunday together because we have breakfast. Like agreements like that.
Yeah.
Sure. But relating to each other is the most important. But the thing about agreements is what if you break one? What if you don't have breakfast with each other on Sunday? Now what? Right? Like I think it just kind of creates more rules. Wayne, you were going to say something, and I feel like Kelly and I've
I know.
taken over.
No, it's totally fine. Yeah. No, I feel like I wanted to go back to when you were talking about, when you mentioned lifestyle. And I think for me, I think it kind of goes back, like, how do I say this? It's I feel like a lot of people fall into this, right? People don't just, I don't think a lot of times, I think they kind of like maybe speak about it in bedroom talk as a desire or a fantasy or, hey, what do you think about this? Kind of more so than anything. And they be like, oh, let's do it. They kind of jump into it without actually doing the work before they get into it. And I think that to a lot of times what happens, and I could be completely wrong, but I feel like just in talking to some of my clients is that, you know, I feel like people like, for instance, let's use lifestyle. Somebody in lifestyle, they may go out there having a good time, and then an opportunity presents itself to where this person starts to like this person's personal life. So now all of a sudden they want to they want to maybe shift the relationship to maybe a more poly because it's an opportunity in front of them to date somebody who they like and they like them back and say, hey, so now in that moment of excitement, they say, hey, let me do this thing. I would love to date this person. The other person starts to feel afraid and scared, like, whoa, what are we doing? We were doing it this way, and now we're changing things. I've seen that happen, and I feel like if they could just pause in that moment and try to like kind of like slow down and be like, okay, what is it that just trying to figure out what type of relationship dynamic do we even want? Are we comfortable with? Or what are we really opening up? Because once we open it, I tell everybody, once you open that door up, you can't control how things happen, especially on the other end. So like you said, your client had done all the work for a year, and I've seen that happen many a time, like where the other client or the other partner is like kind of not into it, but then they do all this work, and then they're like, okay, and they end up finding a different type of relationship because they've taken their time to learn and do all this stuff, and then other person had kind of jumped in it really quickly, and now they're just kind of burned out, and now they're kind of like, okay, their relationship is over. They see their partner over here like really enjoying and taking time and really getting to know somebody, and then they're feeling afraid because like, whoa, what is this? I'm feeling replaced or whatever the case may be. But I feel like for me, I just feel like a lot of times people kind of fall into things without actually really understanding what is it that they're wanting, without like it's like anything. Like I'm gonna go jump in a car without learning how to drive, you know. Like and so now I crash and I'm like, oh no, like what did we expect to happen? We did no research on this. We just decided
Yeah.
to do something because it sounded fun and interesting and we jumped into it and did it. I think that to an extent me and Melissa even did that in the beginning. Like, oh, let's just try this thing and let's go out. And because we didn't, and we met many couples on our way that did the
Yeah,
same thing.
you two did it together, right? You made mistakes, yes, along the way, but this is a joint effort. You two decided this together, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is, I think there's gonna be backpedaling in many situations, right? Because it is like you don't know what you're doing until you do it type of situation. Because there's no non-monogamous people on television. The Cosbys weren't non-monogamous. You know what I mean? Like all those TV shows that you watch that we grew up with were all monogamous families, So I think everybody's getting into it and flubbing, right? Like, trial by error. Is that how you say it? Trial by
Yes.
error, yeah.
Yeah, and I honestly like for us, I wish that we would have kind of in retrospect, obviously, in looking back, you know, right. I wish there was some model out there. I wish there was an example. I wish there was information that we had access to instead of just kind of like putting ourselves out there, which it worked out at the same time, though. There's some things that you feel like wow, we could have definitely used help around this, or because of this,
Yeah.
it changed the trajectory in this way because we didn't know anything, any better rather. And so for me, it's like just kind of like working with couples, like trying to figure out what is it that you're actually wanting. Like if you were to say what it is that your relationship look like, or what is it that you would want, what does that look like, and let's talk about that and kind of like have you guys done research in all the different types of relationships that's out there, because most of us start out as very monogamous, in which then when one person wants to open up or one person wants a deep relationship, that's what starts to cause the issues or the discomfort in a relationship,
Yeah.
the disconnect.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, kind of circling back to the idea of doing it under duress is one person is like adamant that this is the only way. Um, And I think another thing that I think is common is this idea that, we've talked about it on here, identity versus lifestyle. Like I'm choosing to be poly versus no, this is my identity. And using that can also be like weaponized, right? In this scenario, like, no, this is who I am. You can't hold me back. But I think what we see often is people weaponizing that and saying, no, this is my identity. And if you don't allow me to be with multiple people, then it's kind of like an ultimatum, or you're not allowing me to express myself. But it's being weaponized at that point, which, we have to reiterate on the show, like Kelly always does, is that monogamy is a choice, and it is a valid choice, right? If that's what you want, don't force yourself to try something else, because it probably won't work. It's hard enough for people that want this. And if you don't want it, it's probably not going to work. It's not going to be good for you. Right.
Yeah.
So getting clear for those monopoly folks, like, are you really okay if you're monogamous that your partner is poly? Because if you're not, then that's going to be an issue.
Yeah. So I think that does bring us back to I mean, the topic is under duress, and that can come across several different ways. It's like you said, like Wayne and Melissa did it together. Sometimes someone comes home and is like, "Hey, I've done some soul searching and I've talked with my therapist and I really believe this is my identity." Like, there are different ways that it can be introduced, and that can be a shock to someone. And so, I can see how people would say, well, if this is the only way to save my relationship, maybe we do need to try it. But it's like you always say, Mo, closing it sounds real simple, but it's very complicated at that point. There are feelings involved, there are other people involved, information has come to light. And so, I don't know, when you say under duress, do you feel like you're talking more about the people that like are kind of blindsided by it and just scramble and say yes to stay in, or kind of how are you thinking that this gets introduced typically for someone to end up going into it under duress?
Um, in my experience, it's when one partner, like I mentioned, is like, this is how it has to be. This is who I am. Right.
Yeah.
Or actually, what I've also seen is, and in this particular scenario on Reddit, the partner was like, had discussed it with their therapist for many years and then told their partner later. And the partner was kind of like, you never told me about this. Like, I had no idea you were talking about this with your therapist. Like, what? And was like, should I try this with this person? Should I try this with my partner? Because I'm just learning about it, but I don't want to lose the relationship. So people are doing it because they don't want to lose the relationship. And the other scenario is, of course, if there was an infidelity, right? Like, the relationship's already technically open, right? One person's stepping out, they're cheating. And then the couple decides to try open relationship to save the relationship. So I think poly under duress is like trying to be open to save the relationship, to save the original, like, primary.
So what would you say are the best next steps? Like, let's talk through it as if this just happened to someone. Like, you're home and your partner comes in and says, "Hey, I need to talk to you about something, and I realize I'm poly, or I want our relationship to be open." What do you think the best steps are to decide whether or not you're going to do this under duress, or if you're doing this because you really kind of
I
thought it?
think I think you have to be really clear with yourself about what you want. If you know that you want monogamy, but you're just doing this to save the relationship, this relationship is probably over.
Yeah. And also, I think even when using the term lifestyle, just I think it's something I used to say. It's like, what is that? What is lifestyle? Like, if I'm doing something every weekend, it's at that point it's not lifestyle. It's who I am. And so recognizing who your partner is, if this is something that they're wanting on a regular, and it's not just a lifestyle, something we can just quit tomorrow. It's not a lifestyle. It's this who they are, and having a level of understanding of that in it, right? And if you kind of like agree to do that under duress or because your partner's doing it, then yeah, it's gonna be really hard to look at your partner and be like, hey, so I'm ready to stop now. Like that is who they are.
That is who they are. And that's what it comes down to. Is your partner's telling you, like, I want to be open. Your partner cheated on you without telling you. Um, I mean, and now you want to do open relationship. Is this what you really want? Or are you just like, holding on to something that's really actually on its way out?
Yeah, and I think it can maybe be, I don't know, this is just coming to my mind, so it's not even a fully formed thought, but I think maybe for the person who wasn't expecting it, or may not be 100% on board, really understanding what the things are that they feel that is that threatening something. Is there some need that's not being met, and therefore you're looking for it somewhere else, or like helping them figure out what questions they need to ask themselves and what questions they need to ask their partner to really get a full understanding, because I think it is such a scary big topic that you can just immediately like no 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 no, and that's fine. You still maybe know once you've thought it all through, but really looking at what is this going to do to our connection? How is this going to change our relationship? And all those things that could be really scary when you're used to being someone's one and only partner. It can be really scary to think about what it is that how they're connecting with other people, what it is they're looking for in other connections, and understanding that. And is it really that scary, or is that something that may be nice that's going to be outsourced with another person? Like I think it's that probably for someone who's monogamous, that's probably really crazy and scary to hear. Like, what do you mean outsourcing other needs? Right. But really, you do, if you're in more than one relationship, typically certain needs are being met that aren't being met with your primary potentially.
Yeah, I think we can ask that question, right? Like you could ask that to your clients, like, have you ever thought about being with someone else?
Yeah.
Can you lean into this in this new scenario, right? Melissa, you've been so quiet today.
I know. Some things that have come up for me, I don't have any like insights on it. They're more questions than anything and two of them are similar and probably like the opposite ends of each other, of like the thin line between what is like you were talking about, this is just me, or this is my identity, as Mo mentioned, so like what is the line between somebody like really feeling strongly about non-monogamy, wanting to go down that path, like really feeling strongly for themselves about it, and it being weaponized. Like what makes it weaponizing versus like somebody just really standing strong on this really is important to me, it's valuable to me, and I feel like this is a thing in my life that I want to pursue. I guess the other end of that would be like, yeah, the line between, somebody in duress and somebody struggling. I think we've talked about this several times, like, and how do you decipher that? And I think the last thought I had was just like, just saying that the acknowledgement that these questions that you're asked that we're saying to ask or to get clarity on or to be clear on or whatnot, like just know that those things might not come, that might take time to get there. And it might take you going through it, like you said, Mo, having some experiences in order to like really know. And you can't, yeah. So I don't want to like us kind of set this tone where it's like, oh yeah, that you can like have a sit down reflection session with yourself or therapy session and be like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm clear now. This is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not. I think the what that's what it comes up for me as, like, it's not you're not going to know the answer. Um and uh, sometimes that is going to be the answer. And the other thing I often tell people is, like, maybe listen to your body. Maybe your body knows what you want. How's obviously betrayal, this can all go back to betrayal, like someone telling you that they want to be poly after talking to their therapist for years, someone cheating on you. Those all feel like, have a lot of elements of betrayal, right?
Yeah, and I feel like, how I'll talk about choose your own adventure. This really is that. You don't actually know what's going to happen until you've experienced. And it's like, okay, now that I have this information, do I want to go left or right? Now, like with every conversation, like even this is choose your own adventure, after I say something that may bring something up for one of you guys. And it's like that the whole time. So with every experience they're having, with every new partner they may or may not have, with every date they could potentially go on, like it's just choose your own adventure. It's like, okay, with this new information, how am I feeling? How do I want to navigate it? What do I want to share with my partner? and just taking it step by step. Yeah, I'm with you, Melissa. I don't think there's like just one sit down conversation that's going to handle all of it. It's just choose your own adventure at every step.
But it does actually, you saying that though, does take me back to what we've said before about, kind of using the why, there was another way that you mentioned it, Kelly. I think you said you didn't like using why, but maybe your motivation or something. I can't remember what you said, but that can kind of be like a constant guiding uh anchor post or whatever that we can keep checking back in with, it's like the why, because that's something to, yeah, to reference back. If we see that we're going in all these different directions, all these different paths, it's like, is it serving my why? Is it serving why I even decided, why I'm desiring to open up or not,
Yeah.
and maybe that changed or whatnot, but it's at least it's something that we can kind of come back to that has some anchor or some, that's not constantly changing from person to person or situation to situation or whatnot. So,
Well, that brings an interesting question. So let's say you've got two people. One person's like, my why is I really believe in the philosophies behind open. I don't want the rules of monogamy. I want to feel free and autonomous, and I want to experience infinite love. And that's their why. And the other person's why is, well, I want to hold on to this relationship. This relationship's important to me. We have a family, we have a house, we have dogs, we have whatever, this is my person. I want to hold on to this person in this relationship. I don't want to dismantle my life while they go sow their oats. So they've got their why. Are those whys compatible? Right? I think that comes into question because this person's why is this person and this person's why is out here.
mhm.
Right? So they're kind of like their whys don't align.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you do with that?
Yeah, what do you do with that? And that's what I'm saying is like, to me, that feels like we're holding on to something that might potentially not be in our best interest.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's no easy answer to this. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
difficult.
it's a hard answer. It's
Yeah.
a move on with your
Yeah.
answer.
Kelly
Maybe.
had said something earlier, and that's the same thing that came up for me too, Kelly, about just like being like out when you talk about outsourcing and and just like trying to figure out what is it that we're needing, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a good one. And I also saw on the other side of how that could be weaponized. Like somebody who is monogamous could say, well, see, that's why non-monog, that's why they do it, because they aren't getting their needs met in a relationship. And I would push back on that and say, well, the thing is more truth is that there's room for that conversation to happen, because in a non-monogamous relationship, you create space where we can talk about these type of things where you may not speak about your desires, fantasies, or wants and needs in a monogamous relationship to protect the relationship. It's not to say that one is better than the other. It's just that we're going to try to protect the relationship, so we're not going to talk about anything that could feel threatening to our relationship, opposed to in a non-monogamous relationship, you could talk about the things like if you're desiring somebody else or you're wanting something else. So it's that we can actually speak about, like, what, I've been feeling this thing about, like, I've been feeling like I want to connect with Susie more or whoever, I was, and we can talk about it regardless of what the outcome is. It's there's room to talk about it, at least, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this will just be a good moment to say this. We're not just talking about sex. We're talking about other relationships.
Right,
Essentially,
right.
some people that's not like because being ethically non-monogamous can entail a lot of things, and some of that, yes, is sexual and physical, and some of it is not. And that's another way for people to sort of define things or where they are. Because I know for a lot of people, the emotional connection, the humanistic connection is even more threatening than if someone just wants to have sex with someone else, right? Um, but again, that's like you can't promise how you're going to feel. You can't make promises about how it's going to affect you. You can just talk about those different pieces. But I do think it's,
Yeah.
I guess,
I think the communication and the commitment to, coming back to one another and working on the relationship, regardless if you're primary, secondary, whatever, that commitment to working on the relationship is what it boils down to. So two people, one mono, two people, one that's trying poly under duress and the other person, like initiating it. And two people who are trying it together for the first time and not, sure what they're doing. All of them can, I think, benefit from this idea that like when the going gets tough, we've got to make a commitment to our connection. Right.
Yeah. And just out of curiosity, I know Mo, you said that this came up because you were reading something on Reddit. I'm curious, what is the general, like, what was the general feel about it? Like, what was the feedback? What were people saying? I'm just curious what.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what people were saying, and that's what I resonated with it. It was like many people were validating this woman for being monogamous and we're saying like if monogamy is what you want, that's a valid choice. And I really appreciated that because, it's a poly thread, it's a poly Reddit. And I feel like I've seen a lot of progress in these poly communities of recognizing like monogamy is a valid choice and you don't have to choose poly. Poly's not inherently better. And also like recognizing that some people are going to try to convince other people to do poly by using that the thing that I was talking about before, like saying it's an identity, which it may be an identity, and they may be actually feeling honest about that, like Melissa was saying, like who's to say if they're weaponizing it or not. So it was just something to look out for, like it can potentially happen. I think there's a lot of caution around men saying that because they're, this is a way for them to sort of like, cheat, basically, being ethically open type of thing. So there were all sorts of different responses around it, all of which I thought were valuable information for this particular person going through this at that time.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like Melissa and I are always the ones that kind of chime in, like monogamy's okay too if you want that. Like it doesn't have to be like, I feel like we're always sort of like taken up for that stance too. But it's interesting, and I mean, I don't know if this is taking us off topic, you can shut me down. But what I've seen, I think this has happened with 3 different couples I've worked with over the years, that one of them said, hey, let's open it. The other one sort of, I wouldn't say they necessarily did it under duress, but they weren't 100% in. And that person ended up making connections quicker and actually moving forward with the execution of it.
Yeah.
And the person who originally introduced it had lots of big feelings around it. They were the ones who went, and I can say in all of these cases, it was the man who introduced it, and then the woman. It was much easier for the woman to make connections and kind of move forward with practicing the openness of the relationship. And
yeah, I think that is, I think that happens. And there's a few reasons for that. And that might be a whole episode on that, but we can definitely touch on it. Obviously, I think it's easier for women to find people, in our culture. But I think there's another element there, right? Like the man who introduces it, and the women's having luck with it. I don't know. I wonder if there's elements of, the men holding back a little bit because they don't want to hurt their partner, or the person that, initiated it holding back a little bit because they don't want to hurt their partner. And that being a theme, right? Maybe a thread that goes through it. And then, the person that's like, oh, this is a thing that we're doing. Okay, I guess I'll try it. And then having luck,
Yeah, after you brought it up, I started thinking, okay, what clients have I worked with that it was introduced once they were together? And that was something I was like, oh, that happened multiple times. So it just felt like that was worth throwing that in there. But again, I don't know that this necessarily falls 100% under, they did it under duress. It was just like, okay, I don't know, I guess we'll try this. Because there is a big difference. There's a big difference of doing it the way Wayne and Melissa did, where they both were open to it and both wanted to try it, So
Yeah.
really, how does
that makes me think about Well, Mo, I really liked what you said. Like, I think we talked about this in in a past episode of like, we all talked about, landed on this idea of relating, right? Like, no matter what the relationship dynamic is, um, like to me, what feels underneath all of this is relating. And maybe there's like a time, maybe there'll come a time where it doesn't, like, where it's not so monogamy, non-monogamy, everything. It's just like relating. It's like
Yeah,
we've gotten
we're
down to
relating.
just relating, and that can look like so many different ways. The same way that we talk about, I don't know, business, right? We're not, it's not like this such polarized conversation about business. There's so many options, so many things about business. So it's like we're talking about business. Here's all the different ways that we can do business and how you can be in business or whatever the case. And so I don't know. I wanted to highlight that. Like, I love this idea of relating. It does, it can feel a little abstract and like, ooh, well, what does that actually mean? And what does that actually look like? But, and these are the things that we should be learning in school, of like how to relate to each other, how to socialize, and how to, be in relationship, whatever that relationship is. Because think about it, like because we go through a very similar experience, say, I don't know, when you're a couple and one person wants to move across country and the other person doesn't. It's like that can be a very similar experience of like, whoa, what do we do? And this person's like, but I feel very strongly that I want to leave and move across country. And that can completely change a relationship. I
Yeah.
mean, so in the instance, like, how do we navigate that? How do we deal with what really is just like changes, and life changes and people change? And I mean, that's all it comes down to, is like relating and changing.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. It does become a polarizing conversation, with non-monogamy. It's like, oh, non-monogamy,
Yeah. And then it
but
becomes so complex with all of these different,
yeah.
like, and I don't
As
know.
opposed to, yeah, we change, we grow, evolve through our lives, we evolve in our relationships. And yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Sometimes we want something different. Sometimes we want, to just be in relationship with one person. And sometimes we need a little bit something else, or little bit more variety or something, right? Like, but we've slapped all these labels on it when it's just like human evolution and growth. Yeah, for sure.
and I think I'm finding myself thinking in really black and white, which I try not to do. But I guess whether we're talking about like what Melissa's saying, people, one person saying, "Hey, I want to move cross country," or we're talking about um, being faced with your partner, saying they want to be poly, and you're kind of doing it under duress. Because I guess in my mind, I'm thinking, and help me out here, but I guess I'm thinking there are three ways: either like you concede and you just do the thing because your partner's telling you it's so important to do, or you don't, and that has to be the end of it. Like, and I know that there are other options, right? But so to me, I guess I'm thinking, well, then you have to be all in, you have to be all out, and if you're all in, then it brings us back to, well, then you're doing it under duress. But I know it's not that black and white, but in my brain,
Right.
that's kind of where it's going.
It's interesting. That's an interesting concept. Like, yeah, my partner really wants to move, so I'm doing this with them, for them, versus my partner really wants to move and I'm on the fence, but I'm gonna do it to try it. Like, I think there's like a mentality there, right? That you're kind of talking about, like the gray area and the mentality. Or my partner wants to move, I'm not ready, so I'm gonna let him go and I might join them later. Or my partner wants to move, I'm absolutely never gonna do that. Like, I think there are so many different ways that it can be looked at.
I remember one time out in supervision long ago when I was first starting out, and we were talking about like couples work, and this was so profound to me, and I've experienced it in my personal life, and even with couples. It's like you were talking about the like their what were we talking about? The solutions or answers or whatnot, how we're like trying so hard to find the answer, find the solution, and we're like trying to think of it, and like think it up or whatnot. And it's not usually like how that works, you know? It's again back to the relating when we somehow can kind of just either, I mean, I don't know, maybe we can talk more practically about what does that even mean to connect and relate, but maybe in my mind it's like, okay, well, if we can be honest with ourselves, you know, try to be honest with our partners, connect in this vulnerable way, you know, where we're sharing vulnerably what we're feeling or what we desire, what we fear, and kind of lay it all out on the table together, you know, as best we can, like giving each other the space to lay it all out as best we can so we can kind of see what's there and not do anything for a minute, you
Yeah.
know, and not try to make any decisions for a minute and let that kind of be. Um, Ask questions, you know, get curious about the things, you know, try to feel things out, imagine things or whatever. And it's like eventually, I think, I don't know, this is maybe more theory than practical, but like the answers can come. At least I'll say that. I won't say will come, but they can come. They can come that way and we can get more creative, I think, when we're able to, I don't know, to kind of meet in that vulnerable way, you know, address the fears and all of the emotions or whatnot, and then our mind becomes available and we have more access to that, you
Yeah.
know, brainstorming part of our mind.
Yeah, when we're always focused on problem solving or fixing the problem or finding the solution, I think we rob ourselves of what you're talking about, curiosity and natural solutions just showing up, right? Like using your example of the moving, my partner needs to move and da 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 da. Well, maybe the other partner suddenly gets some sort of job offer, right? Locally, and now they can't move, right? So the decision's been made for them. Well, I got to stay here, you got to go. Or maybe the partner gets offered a remote position at their own company. Like solutions somehow do happen. The universe does it happen. The universe is constantly shifting and changing. And so we can lean into the just, this is scary for me. I don't really want to move. I don't really know if I want to do poly, you know, and just keep talking about it and be curious about it. Because out of that can come, yeah, you know, yesterday I didn't want to do poly, but like I had this dream and like, I think I might want to try it. You know what I mean? Like we just kind of like open ourselves up when we are vulnerable to, you know, change. And I think you're also talking about leaning into that discomfort of, right? Like this is
Mhm.
scary for me. I don't know what the answer is, but this is scary.
But I'm staying open
Yeah.
to something coming to me. Like, yeah, that's the other part too, is like, yes, scary, leaning into it, it's okay that we don't know the answers, but also, yeah, staying open to answers coming to us or receiving something, you know, and noticing any kind of, yeah, shutdown that we might be having or whatnot. So, yeah.
Yeah. Kelly, you were going to say something?
Well, yeah, I feel like weaponization was mentioned a couple of times, but I feel like it was every time it was mentioned in the way of the person who's introducing poly, the person who wants poly, you know, that it could be easy to weaponize that, but I think it could be just as easy to weaponize the other side if you do it under duress. Of,
Hmm.
hey, I did this and now our relationship is a mess and I didn't want to do it and I knew it was going to be bad and it's something that you
Mm,
hang over someone's head for a really long time, right? And so
sure.
if it's under, I mean, I think with anything you got to be careful that nobody's weaponizing it, but I feel like that would be a really easy thing to weaponize for a very long time.
Right, right. Because that's that power imbalance. Like now you're doing it under duress and like what's, you know, the toxic things come out on both sides, right? Like this isn't to blame one or the other.
Yeah, that was the only other thing. The weaponization piece was the only other thing that popped up.
Oh yeah, and I think you know it's important to recognize this. You know, I know we're at the end of our session, but like it's important to recognize that mono is the normative, right? And so it's more likely the monogamous person. I mean, monogamous person has more power from a social level to do the weaponizing, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely.
No, we have a tendency to like pathologize polyamory and people trying to do polyamory. That's the norm in our culture. So it's important to look at it from the other angle as well.
Poly under duress, problems under duress, solutions under duress,
Solutions under duress.
solutions under duress,
Yeah.
weaponization under duress.
Yeah,
Writing.
doing anything under duress, I think we should all lean into what Melissa's talking about. Like, don't do anything under duress. Like, just try to talk about it. And
That's a sign to let me just take a moment, pause for be still for a
Listen to your
moment. Like,
body.
listen.
let's listen.
That's your cue to sit down and take a big old cup of stuff.
Go fucking sit down already.
Just sip out of your shut the fuck up cup.
Oh, all right.
That's a great ending. That's a great.
All right.
Bye,
Thanks, y'all. Bye.